Okay, good evening, everybody. It's now 7 o'clock, so we will be officially opening our Sittingbourne Councillors and Residents Forum. Just as a bit of housekeeping, as we're in the chamber today, usually we take part in the committee room, but as we're in the chamber, because it's much cooler in here, when people do speak, if you could use this microphone, there is a button in front of you that will flash red when you're then good to speak, and when you've finished speaking, if you could just turn that off. The reason we ask people to do that is for the benefit of people who are joining online as well, so that's how they're able to hear, because this is a hybrid meeting. So welcome everybody to this evening's Sittingbourne Councillors and Residents Forum, including anyone who has joined remotely. The following Swale Borough Council officers are in attendance. We have the Director of Regeneration and Neighbourhoods, Emma Wiggins, who is with us online. We have Strategic Programme and Assets Manager, Kieran Mansfield. We have Policy Engagement Officer, Janet Dart, and Projects Officer, Emma Bartley. I would also just like to ask the Sittingbourne area councillors who are here to please make themselves known, introduce themselves and say which ward they represent, please. And we'll start with Councillor Watson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My name's Councillor Karen Watson and I represent Roman Ward.
I'm Councillor Shelley Cheeseman and I represent Homewood Ward.
And I'm Councillor Tony Whitcliffe, representing Milton Readers Ward.
Councillor Tim Gibson, and I represent Roman Ward.
Councillor Sarah Stephen, I represent Woodstock Ward, so we're not potentially in the Sittingbourne group, but I've got a huge interest in town.
I'm Councillor Paul Stephen. I'm also Woodstock Ward, and I've come here just to see how it really happens tonight.
And I'm Councillor Simon Clark. I represent Homewood Ward.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We don't have any Kent County councillors with us. We do also have Councillor Mark Last from Merston Ward, who has joined remotely online. Are there also any representatives of local organisations here this evening who would like to make themselves known and introduce themselves?
Richard Ebbett, Chair of the Historical Research Group of Sittingbourne.
Thanks very much, Richard.
John Hepburn, representing Swale Heritage Museum.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Anybody else wish to introduce themselves? That's okay, that's fine. Just to explain a little bit about the item that I'm sure many people are here for this evening, we've got a workshop session which is agenda item 5, and when we do that there will be a little bit for about 15 minutes where we will ask people to work in smaller groups just to discuss through some of the issues that we will then report back to the rest of the room and that we will then all discuss. So looking forward to doing that. As anyone that has attended one of these meetings previously will know, these meetings now have a different name. It used to be the Sittingbourne Area Committee, but we undertook a review to make sure that we're really using these meetings to the best of their ability. And first and foremost, we thought it was important the members of the public knew that when they come along, they're active participants in these meetings, and also it's a really good opportunity to meet with and speak to their councillors. In terms of the other changes, the review of the old area committees agreed a number of recommendations, one of which is that members of the public and community groups who are here will have the ability to vote and express or indicate a preference on certain items. It will be agreed by the chair in advance which items this applies to, and we've made clear on the agenda, or as a proposal comes forward, I will make clear where I invite either members to vote, or whether it's a vote of all participants here in the meeting. As chair, I will explain the potential outcomes of that public vote before a vote is taken. Examples of some of the outcomes of that public vote could be to agree that the chair will write to an organisation on behalf of the Councillors and Residents Forum, make a recommendation to a Swale Borough Council Service Committee. Procedurally, this will have to be followed by a councillors vote, so those of the Sittingbourne area who are here, to make the recommendation to the chair of the service committee. Suggest a topic that will be taken to other councillors and residents forums where we feel that there's common ground or shared interest in doing so, or to propose something that we bring to a future forum meeting. So just a little bit of an introduction about some of the changes that are now being rolled out through these forums. Final bit of housekeeping is the emergency evacuation procedure. Please be aware that in the unlikely event of an emergency evacuation, because there is no scheduled fire alarm, if it does sound, please leave through the nearest exits. We've got an exit here, and obviously you can leave through the way that you came in, and look out for the doors that are signed as fire escapes accordingly. And we assemble down in the car park of Swale House. Please don't re-enter the building until you are told by officers that it is safe for us to do so. Can I just check, is there anybody here that would require assistance during an evacuation? Okay. Yep, noted, thank you. Okay, I think hopefully that's clear. Now moving on to agenda item 2, which is the apologies for absence. We've got apologies from Councillor Derek Carnell, Councillor Kieran Mishuk, Councillor Charlie Miller, and Councillor Carrie Pollard. And Councillor Mark Last is joined remotely. Agenda item 3, which are the minutes of the last meeting held on the 26th of February, minute numbers 769 to 781, and the 13th of May 2026, minute numbers 34 to 35. Do members agree these as a correct record?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Winklis.
A trustee on the Milton Country Park, a member of the Milton Regis High Street Society, also a member of the Milton Court Hall Committee. Okay.
The Court Hall, yep.
Court Hall.
Okay, thank you. Any other declarations from members? Okay, great. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is our main substantive item on the agenda this evening, which is a workshop discussion on how to improve footfall in Sittingbourne Town Centre. As hopefully many of you will know, because we've been trying to publicise this aspect of the meeting a lot over the coming weeks, and I've delivered letters to most of the businesses that operate in and around the High Street area, and also contacted plenty of groups as well that operate from the town centre area. We secured funding from the government from their Pride in Place Impact Fund, which has to be spent, or at least being spent, by March next year, as part of that, councillors set up a working group to decide allocations, and an allocation was made for Sittingbourne, and from that over £300,000 of funding has been approved by councillors to spend in the High Street and surrounding area. These are sort of physical improvements, and this is funding that has to be spent one-off. So just to sort of set the parameters for those sorts of things that we'll be discussing. There is a PowerPoint presentation up on the screen that we will just sort of start to trot through, and if there are any questions that people have as we're going through that, please just raise your hand, and we've got officers here who will be able to assist me in answering those questions for you. Back in 2022, councillors who were around then, so that was before my time on the council, will know that a really good document was pulled together called the Sittingbourne Supplementary Planning Document, Sittingbourne SPD, and a lot of work went into that. And what that did was outline a vision for the town centre area should the relevant funding or regeneration power come available at some point. And obviously we are several years on from then, and that significant level of funding that would be needed to fully deliver that hasn't come through, but that doesn't mean that it might not. So it remains a really valuable document. And the sorts of things that it looked at were, what sort of activity do we have in the high street and the area? What are the heritage aspects of the high street and the surrounding area? How do people get to and from the town centre and move about and interact with the town centre? And what sort of sustainability improvements could be made? So there could be environmental improvements that could be made, there could be transport and cycling and walking improvements that could be made, and as it says about the overall vision there, that is for the historic town centre of Sittingbourne to become the thriving community, leisure and economic heart of the borough. So as I said, the aim of the SPD there was to look at how the land is used in the area, to look at what we can do to strengthen heritage and culture in Sittingbourne. I've spoken about some of the walking and cycling stuff, and we've had other pieces of work which we've also discussed at these predecessor meetings about the LC Whip work, which is cycling and walking routes, and obviously a lot of this stuff has to be done in partnership with Kent County Council, so it's not that we can just deliver it even if we had the money. There's lots of different agencies involved that we'd have to work with, and as I said, they respond positively to the challenges of climate change. A lot of our public spaces in the UK do not have much greenery or trees, unlike a lot of European town centres, because traditionally we don't have much of the sort of weather that we're experiencing today, but it is becoming more intense and more common, and we need to try and future-proof our town centres. So there's something to look at in that document around that as well, and it's also to look at how any improvements we make will bring in further private and public investment to the area to ensure that we're creating jobs, and to ensure that there are the range of things that people want to do, whether that's retail, leisure, culture. So this map, I don't know, it is quite large behind me. So you can see that you've got various zones to what is classed as Sittingbourne Town Centre. You've got the industrial zone over in the Eurolink. You've got the Milton Creek area. You've got the core town centre, which is around the High Street and St Michael's Road, and goes up to the Avenue of Remembrance. And then as you go further along, obviously you've got Albany Park, which is our main recreation space in the town. These are all the areas that we have to give some sort of consideration to this evening, and that we have given consideration to, and we've scoped out what ideas we could spend that Pride in Place impact funding on. So here is a little summary of the vacancy rates, which we thought would be quite helpful for people to understand. Obviously, Sittingbourne High Street area is quite long. We do have a long High Street, and for lots of people as well, that extends down into East Street and to West Street as well. But when looking at the vacancy rates for the sort of primary shopping area in the High Street and the Forum, Sittingbourne's is at just over 10%. The South East average is just over 11%, and national average is 13.5%. So we're not we are faring better than the national picture. We're similar to what the picture is across the southeast, and I think anecdotally people will look at some other high streets that do exist even in Kent and see that some of them are unfortunately not even in the shape that our high street is. That being said, having a low vacancy rate does not mean per se that we have the sort of town centre that people want, and with the sort of being able to undertake the sort of activity that they want. So that's not directly within the scope of the council, but obviously lots of things that you do that make improvements to the area would make the area more appealing for people wanting to open businesses and support footfall for existing businesses who may wish to expand or invest further too. So there were 19 vacancies as of March, and from that a little bit of assessment was done that we've got 50 national chains, 16 local chains or regional chains, and 99 independent shops in that area. Here's a little bit of a breakdown about what the type of activity is within those commercial units. So just over 7% are convenience and sort of daily essential shops. There are just over 19% are things like coffee shops, cafes, restaurants, pubs. Almost 20% are things like clothing, books, stationery, cards and gifts, florists, electronics, those sorts of things. So those sort of specialty retail. And just over 40% are personal services, which obviously for a lot of people, that's things like hairdressers, banks, opticians, dentists, charity shops and community groups working out of those or being based in one of those units, which is something that's obviously become increasingly common over the last 20 years, that people see their high streets having a large number of these units. When we sort of discuss these at council committees or in council meetings, there are very clearly a range of challenges that we have to give consideration to, and I thought it was really important that people were aware of these when we're coming to discuss people's ideas and people's suggestions. One of the big issues that we have, which is not something that other councils necessarily face, is the fragmented property ownership of the high street. The vast majority of properties in the town centre are owned in private hands, private ownership, and often by people who do not necessarily have close association with the town. In other places around the country, you've got councils, district councils, that own shopping parades, that own chunks of their high street. So they're able to do all sorts of creative things around when one of those becomes vacant, or around rents and rent relief. Those sorts of things are not within our scope because we do not own, as a local authority, substantial amounts of the high street, if any properties on the high street. Individual building owners or occupiers are responsible for the maintenance, improvements and the marketing of empty properties, but that does not mean that the local authority doesn't have any powers and any say over it. There are things that we can do, and we will explore some of those, but they are powers that can be quite limited in scope, and it's quite a challenge if the people that we are reaching out to choose not to engage with the council. Our powers just diminish further generally, and obviously it is a little bit of a broken record, but it's true nonetheless. Councils are in very challenging financial positions. We are in a very different financial position than 25 years ago. And lots of things have been stripped out of what councils used to do as par for the course. There's, all sorts of activity has ceased around high streets and town centres that would have supported footfall, including managing and running events, some of the stuff around managing and running markets, some of the stuff as well, even just in terms of publicising areas and promoting tourism and leisure opportunities. The scope for councils to do a lot of this stuff is so limited now, because so much of our funding is spent on statutory services, largely around temporary accommodation and homelessness, which takes a huge amount of the council's budget and leaves us with very little to do the sorts of things that councils regularly did in the past. Here's a little bit about some of the enforcement powers that councils do have. I'm not an expert in these, so if people have any questions about those, that's why Kieran's here, because he'll be able to answer those. He's the font of all knowledge on these, and whenever I'm asking him what they mean again, he helpfully reminds us all what they are. So we do have a section 215 notices, which is to encourage maintenance, improvements and security measures. We've done those with things, or we've looked at exploring those to encourage efforts to be made with the former cinema and bingo hall. I think it's still very much an eyesore for the town and something that we'd really like to see sorted and resolved on such a prominent corner plot. And that said, I think the state it was in a year ago versus now, there's been proactive steps to properly secure the building, although there's still the occasional breach that I'm reporting to the police. And, there aren't as many concerns about that side of things, but the building remains empty and very little is being done on the side of the owner to explore what he would like to do with such a prominent plot for the town, and a prominent building for the town, which remains a shame. There's community protection warnings or community protection notices, and they will often be linked to things like antisocial behaviour associated with a site, and they will be served on landowners. I think there is one in place for Bell House, and that's largely to do with a lot of the issues that people have with antisocial behaviour at that building. And there is also a Swale Derelict Buildings meeting, which is held quarterly, involving the police and the council and other regulatory bodies to sort of continually assess and hopefully put pressure on the building owners and site owners. Then there is the community safety unit, obviously with the police, which is dealing with some of the antisocial behaviour associated with trespassing at those derelict buildings, and that's a constant battle that we're dealing with as a result of these buildings being left empty and vacant in the way that they are. Then there's also something that the government has been speaking about recently called high street rental auctions, and I do not know the details of those adequately enough to try and speak to you about them, so I will just quickly ask Kieran to run through what they are.
Okay, so high street rental auctions were a power that were introduced at the very end of 2024 by the previous government, and they were they have been a slow burn because they're quite challenging to deploy. So essentially, it gives councils the power to, through a very staged and sequential process that has to go through kind of legal hoops, to identify an area. And then where you have buildings which fall within that area and are persistently vacant, either for 12 months solid or for a period of, I can't remember what the number of weeks is, over a 2-year period, you can enter into a legal process with the property owner, which effectively tries to force them to let the building. But ultimately, if you can't let the building, if they don't let the building, the council can then hold what's called a high street rental auction. So we effectively take over the marketing and the letting of that building. Now, quite often that may well involve, and this is one of the big challenges for local councils, that might well involve bringing that building up to a legally lettable standard, which could involve very substantial capital works, which the council would then need to seek to recover from the landlord. And because of the fragmentation of our ownership and the way some buildings are owned, that could prove a challenge in terms of a company could be folded, for instance, to avoid that liability, just as an example. So I think nationally, the last figure I read, which is only a few weeks ago, I think there's only been about 60 high street rental auctions nationally that have taken place. But they have been used to try and engage with landlords as a sort of veiled threat sort of way, and that's possibly where they are most useful.
Yeah, and I think you can see that the scope for those powers for more recently vacant buildings that then may be vacant for a prolonged period of time, there's real scope for those to be helpful versus some of the ones that unfortunately we face, which have been already empty for a considerable amount of time, and therefore the capital involved to try and turn those around would be immense. But I think, is it Rugby Council have been using these powers? I might be wrong there, but I think they've been using them to good effect. So it can be done. It's just about using it in the right situation.
the one we've been looking at, Chair, is Bassett Law Council up in North Nottinghamshire, because they're one of our nearest neighbour group of local authorities, in that they've got characteristics that are not dissimilar to ours.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, and they have slightly, different characters to the towns and areas that they've got, a bit like how Swale has. So, next slide. So, just mentioning or touching on what I've mentioned earlier about the Pride in Place impact funding. There's 360,000 allocated for Sittingbourne town centre improvements. As I said, it's time limited, and they can't be for things that require ongoing funding year after year. They've got to be stuff that is committed or completed by March, and it's one-off expenditure to make physical improvements, and that does limit what we can obviously do with it somewhat, but I think equally we could still spend that 10 times over in Sittingbourne, I think, if we're all being real about it. So, we can still do stuff with this money, and it's how we can do the maximum we can to make the maximum impact with this. And, referring back to that map earlier, the scope for where we can spend that is quite large. Albany Park, the High Street, Avenue of Remembrance, around the station. There's all sorts of things that could be looked at to do that. So some of the initial things that have been scoped out by councillors, undertaking walkabouts with officers and speaking to some local partners around the sorts of things that they have suggested. There are wayfinding improvements. That's to improve the connections that people have as you come out of Sittingbourne station. There is nothing telling you there until you cross the road what we have, and that then follows through some really good wayfinding that was done as part of the Bourne Place redevelopment, which explains parts of the town's history and brings you through to the High Street from there. But what's some people have considered is lacking is that if you got out of Sittingbourne station, or you were dropped down by alien spacecraft outside there, you wouldn't know that even behind you is the retail park, that you can get to the Eurolink, or what direction the Eurolink industrial estate is. I've had plenty of people ask me for directions for that at the station. You wouldn't know that we've got a Green Flag award-winning country park nearby in reasonable walking distance, but easily in cycling distance. There's lots of people use trains to get about to different parts with their bikes for the weekend. They're missing out on that. You would not know that we have Albany Park in the town. You wouldn't know as you get out of there where the leisure centre might be. You wouldn't even know about some of our other heritage landmarks, such as St Michael's Church, or so on and so forth. So that's one bit that's lacking, that people have raised. There's some things that could be done around the Avenue of Remembrance. It's a unique part of the town's identity. We've got colleagues here that can speak much more with authority on that subject than I can, but I believe it's the only example still of a publicly used highway, which is an Avenue of Remembrance. There's aspects that people might want to consider around Roman Square, and also looking at how some of the existing wayfinding that we've got links up. So we've got some of those things that point people in the right directions around there. They add a bit of heritage feel to the High Street as well. They sort of need reviewing. They sort of stop before you even get to Roman Square, and they don't take you all the way through to the Avenue of Remembrance and on to Albany Park. So that connectivity is lacking. People have raised greening improvements to the town centre. There's a number of fixed raised beds that are in not the best of shape. There is potential for additional improvements to Albany Park to make that feel like a much more pleasant place to visit. And there's been suggestions of, if we can't explore further tree planting down the high street because of the utilities that sit underneath it, there's been some areas identified where there could be further deep brick planters where you could plant small trees or make other improvements like that to just add to the visual feel and visual look of the high street to make it a more inviting place. There's also things that could be done to enhance and highlight the heritage that we have in the area. So there's been some suggestions around some of the lighting in St Michael's Churchyard, and people have also raised that as they come from St Michael's Road into the High Street. And some of those physical improvements to the Avenue of Remembrance around, particularly from the Appleyard up to Albany Road area, where some of the trees are obviously grown out of their existing sort of grates that are around them, and what we can do to make sure that that's all future proofed and you know, really is enhanced, because it's a huge asset to the town. And there's also some other improvements that people have suggested about Albany Park to make sure that the footpaths are in better condition, that the physical things such as benches and bins and all of that actually match and create a much more heritage feel to the park, which doesn't quite have at the moment, even though it's a well-used and well-liked space in the town centre. I think that's it, because we didn't want too many things to be looked at as if we've sort of just come along and we've decided everything, because that's not the case at all. We just wanted to get a flavour of some of the things that this funding could be spent on, so that when we put this out to you for discussion, you've got an idea of those sorts of things. That does not mean those are the things that we have to go with at all. We want people to be putting forward their thoughts, ideas, suggestions. I think perhaps it might be helpful if we just have 5 minutes, if people want to make some contributions about what they identify as some of the real issues facing the high street and the town centre that we could discuss making some changes for within the scope of the council's powers, bearing in mind what we've discussed in the presentation. And then we'll just split into a couple of groups so that people can talk through those and come back, and we will hopefully be able to note down with Janet's assistance some of those really helpful ideas that we can take forward to the relevant group of councillors who will be working with officers to decide how that funding's spent. So has anybody got any initial thoughts they want to share? Okay, yes, please.
It's about trees. For a start, there are a number of trees in the car parks by Swallows, for instance, where there have been perhaps a third of the trees are missing and haven't been replaced. And secondly, about planting trees in the high street, and I think that would be a huge advantage in terms of shade, as in this sort of time, is that though the council doesn't know exactly where the power lines and the drains go in the high street, the utilities must, and planning department may know them. And it ought to be possible to find places along the high street where you could plant trees. Hopefully native trees like silver birch, but maybe others.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and as part of one of the walkabouts, we definitely looked at potential locations. I think some would be more challenging than others, I think, is basically what's been said. I would just quickly bring you in because the others I've got here are councillors, so they can wait. Would you like to make your...
I think so, yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Right. As one of a couple of shop owners here, with all due respect, planting trees, painting lampposts and making sure all the benches are in the same colour ain't going to make a blind bit of difference. That's the bottom line. To traders in the high street, that is not going to make a blind bit of difference. What's the point in having loads of nice little flower pots everywhere if there's not actually anybody in the high street to see it? You've got to get people in the high street, get the buses back in the high street. Why is Sittingbourne High Street pedestrianised on a Saturday when there's 30 people that walk through the high street? Why? Back in 1985, sure, but not today. At the end of the day, businesses survive by adapting to the environment. Town centres aren't adapting to the environment. We're stuck in 1985. Why are we closing the high street on a Friday, or half the high street on a Friday, for a market that could be in the high street on a Saturday when the high street is already closed? At the end of the day, well, why on earth do we have a market that covers half the high street? I was just saying earlier, so last Saturday I was in Faversham. I always thought Faversham was pretty run down, pretty dry, a bit like Sittingbourne, to be fair. Last Saturday it was buzzing, absolutely buzzing. I used to be involved with the St George's Day events that were happening, and I walked down Faversham Market on Saturday, and it reminded me of one of the best St George's Day we've ever had, where you could not walk from one end to the other without bumping into people. The pubs were lively, the shops were lively, the stalls were of good quality. The week before that, I sat in my shop in the high street from 9:30 till actually 4:30, because I gave up and left early. During that time, I took £3.99. The most annoying thing, cost me £4.60 to park there for the day. So I'm 61 pence down. That's without any electricity. You've got to get people into the town. And like I say, trees, yeah, as lovely as they are, we don't need them in the high street. What we need is more parking spaces. We need narrower pavements. We don't need big pavements when there's only 20 people walking down the town today. So we need to narrow the pavements. We need to have diagonal parking, more free parking in the high street, get the buses back in the high street. The only reason the buses aren't in the high street now is because Swale Borough Council cocked up all the bus timetables by saying, right, Monday to Thursday, you have to have a certain route. Friday, you can't take that route because we're going to close the top end of the high street. On Saturday, you can't come in at all. And the bus company said, we won't bother then. That needs adjusting. And to be fair, probably wouldn't even take a penny out of the 300,000 or whatever it is that you've got.
Just a couple of things on that. So any major changes that we'd need to make to the highway, unfortunately, is not within Swale Council's remit. It would be for Kent County Council to do, and we're the recipient of this funding, so that does pose another challenge. It's one of those things again where it gets caught between the ping pong of having two-tier councils, and obviously the government's going to see to that anyway, and there'll be an update on that later. So that would be a challenge between now and when this funding has to be spent. But I do take your point about Faversham, but there's also some really interesting things that you raised as issues for Sittingbourne High Street, which large chunks of Faversham, when it's market days, are closed to traffic. So it's not necessarily pedestrianisation. There's got to be a proper conversation had about that, and I think it's something that people here should discuss as one of those issues. It's something that people raised with me as I was publicising this meeting. They think the pedestrianisation on Saturdays had its day. Some people said it should be only up to where it is on market days on a Saturday, so that there is some access for it. I think people also do agree, and this is why I'm emphasising this point, because it would be really helpful for other people to discuss this when we break out, about the availability of parking on the high street itself, that obviously a lot of those are disabled parking bays, which everybody understands, and that there could be something creative done around some of the car parks around the high street to have bays with the same restrictions as on street parking, to give people additional capacity and availability to park there for free for the same amount of time as they do if they parked on street, to go into the couple of shops they need to use and leave again. So that's one of the other suggestions. I think some councils have done it and they're called stop and shop bays. That's something that also could be given consideration. So it'd be good to hear people's thoughts on that. But I do take that there's a fundamental issue about what is the draw for people to come to the high street. And there is a real challenge for the, like you say, how town centres, because they're all unique, adapt to that situation. Obviously, Sittingbourne is one long high street, and so people giving thought to how we do that would be really helpful. I think the gentleman here just had a question, and I'll come to councillors.
Yeah, evening. Well, we run probably one of the most longest standing shops in the high street. So when my great grandfather started the business, you can appreciate that our family has seen some changes. Now, the biggest change of all was when the high street was made one way. That was the seed of deterioration set in by the council. Now, we've already sat here for 25 minutes listening to you tell us what you can't do. Okay? So you've got to start thinking outside the box, because by planting a few more trees and a few more chairs is not going to help.
Just to say, that's not what we're saying is all is on the table here. What we're talking about, these are the sorts of physical improvements that can be delivered within the time scale that the government gives us to spend the money. That's all I'm saying. That's not to say that there's not more fundamental things we need to discuss, and that's what I want people to get out of this. But we have to set it within the framework. That's why I've outlined. It might seem these are things we can't do, but it would be a waste of everybody's time if we spoke about things that we literally have no power to do. That's the key point.
If you don't start trying to change those things, we'll be here in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, and you'll have less and less shops with people's shopping habits changing anyway. The only way you'll get a good community within the town centre is through decent shops, okay? The only other way is to look at it totally different. Perhaps we shouldn't spend it on anything like that. Maybe spend the money on some sort of a lobbying group from partly retailers or local businesses and councillors. Start lobbying the councils, Kent County Council, lobby the central government to put more money in to help in town centres. Because we're not alone. Town centres up and down the country are, just like ours, deteriorating. But you've got to think outside the box. And all I've heard so far this evening is the same old thing. So you're going to get the same old thing. We need to think outside the box, get somebody with a bit of guru behind them that can get things done.
Right, okay. All I'm going to ask is if councillors are making points here, they need to be brief, because this isn't the end. This was the opening of the discussion. So the presentation was so that people understood what was within the remit of what this funding can be spent on. That doesn't mean that we can't discuss the other issues, and that's what I would want you to do as part of this workshop. But we really need to have some context to what this funding is and what it can be spent on, and it has to be. This is how the government have told us we have to spend it on capital projects. So it is those physical sorts of projects. So that doesn't mean that we can't make a note of all the points that we need to be working on with other agencies and other bodies and Kent County Council and what our ask can be of the government. But the extent of this conversation isn't that presentation, because that was just to set the scene for what it can be spent on, just to be fully clear about that. So I'm going to ask for very short comments from councillors, and then I'm going to ask that you go into your groups to discuss this and report back. Okay? So, yeah, I think if I can just take people's other contributions through their workshop groups and then feedback if there's something particularly to raise. Otherwise, we're going to do the job of those workshop groups here as one big group, and I don't really think that's the way that we should be doing this. So I'm going to ask for just some very, very short comments, please, starting with Tony Winklis.
Thank you, Chair. Possibly it's going to wait for the workshop. Following up from the two business owners in the high street there, I was going to ask the question now, but it can come up in the workshop, as I say, how we can encourage businesses literally back into this decaying high street, as we know. But
okay, that's fair enough. Okay, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, Albany Park, all the seating is on one side of the park, the cemetery side, so you could do with some more seating on the Albany Road side of the park. And as I believe you said, also the footpath around the perimeter there are certain areas of it that have like tree roots going under it, so it's quite uneven for people that use walking aids or wheelchairs. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. I look forward to the workshops. I think we've got a lot with the retailers. We really want to hear what you have to say. We really do want to take this seriously into consideration. What I would like us to seriously look at, and I won't look at Teresa and Richard too much when I say this, and that is celebrating the history of Sittingbourne. I think we do need to put that out there. Faversham is a fantastic place for doing that. We need to learn about what they're doing and do it here, because it will work here if we get it right.
And just to add a bit of context to that, and I'm sorry if it sounds like, oh, this is something that we can't do, but Sheerness and Faversham have town councils. And those town councils spend a lot of money, even just on the things like the market, for example. All of those market stalls and stands that they have, all of that creates that for them. It's all paid for and done by them. It's all managed by them. All the events they have that drive the footfall, it's all done by them. We do not have that in Sittingbourne, and there was a consultation, which again I'll update this meeting on later, but that consultation response did not back a town council for Sittingbourne. So, you know, some people will consider that to be a missed opportunity. Yes, you had to be living in Sittingbourne to do that, unfortunately. I will take your comment and then I'll ask if people can just split into their smaller groups, please.
Well, just quickly, John Hepburn, representing Sittingbourne Heritage Museum as a member. We need a central town museum, no doubt about it, because we have so much of SARS history locked away in lockers, containers not shown. We need that. And if we do that and get a suitable property, which I know there is one in Roman Square, that could be up and running in months. And these are the sort of things that illustrate it. A lot of people don't realise that little country crossroads is Key Street.
I'll just quickly bring you in, Richard, as you indicated as well.
Chair, I'm pleased to hear about your appreciation of the wayboards, and I'd like to say that HRGS contributed to those and would contribute again. So, and in terms of your quest regarding footfall, I'd like to make the point that over the last 2 years, we have lost the Old Forge Wartime House, which was a significant draw to the town, the Swale Media and Arts Centre, and we have lost now the Sittingbourne Heritage Museum. Their collection is now in 3 seat containers out of sight of. You've lost the Heritage Hub, which HRGS ran. We were proud to have, over the 11 years we were there, 45,000 visitors, which for a small exhibition on heritage wasn't bad. And of course, we've lost the mainstream of the Sittingbourne Society. So a lot of the heritage assets of the town have disappeared. And they were draws, many of them, from outside of town. We've had certainly visitors coming to us from all over the world. So a significant asset loss. I think I'll save the rest for the workshop, if I may.
Okay, really appreciate that. So I think there's lots of things that are ideas there that people need to suggest. So we're not just asking for suggestions for that, how that funding can be spent, the 360,000. By all means, please come up with suggestions for that can be looked at. But also all the other issues that we need to consider. There's been plenty outlined to people. If they are longer term things that we need to be asking for, if that's stuff that we need to take to the new unitary council when that is formed for the area, then so be it. But though there's no limits to what people suggest we need to be doing. It's just whether that funding can be used to do that, or it's something that we need to pursue outside of that funding. So If people wouldn't mind just splitting into, I think we could probably do 3 smaller groups here. I would appreciate if we didn't have 3 councillors in a group together, though. All right. Thank you.
Hello, for people online.
We'll reconvene at 8 o'clock.
If you would like to stay on the meeting, that would be great. And if you have any suggestions that you'd like to make, you could either put them in the chat, the meeting chat, or if that's not working for you, I think you all have my email address, the Councillors and Residents Forum email address. If you send any comments into there, then I will include them in the feedback. But we'll be back with the meeting at 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, if we could start to return to your seats, and when we regroup, anybody who hadn't spoken, who wanted to raise something before we broke out, do indicate, and I will make a note of that so that you can have your say. So if you can start to move back to your seats, that would be really good, please. Thank you. Okay, if everyone can return to their seats, please, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. Right, okay, if I could just ask for a bit of quiet. If there was anybody that had hoped to say anything before we went into the groups that would like to indicate now, I'll take those comments and then we will just ask for a bit of feedback. Any comments that people didn't quite have? Was there something you wanted to raise?
I was going to say that it's quite a small amount of money, so that we should make the maximum impact in the worst area of the town, which I consider is the bottom end of the town near this building, where the buildings are derelict, and these buildings are important listed buildings. And I agree with the gentleman over there that trees in this area, albeit they may have to be small trees, would enhance this area. But primarily, I think I'm concerned about the listed buildings, the broken windows, there's trees growing out of them, and they're seriously important buildings. And this is, obviously we can't achieve anything but these with this sort of money, but we've got to bear in mind that we can't expect them to be shops in the future. And we had a report at the council meeting about multiple occupancy, and we've got to look to the future, and probably these buildings are going to be residential. And this area of the town will probably become more of a precinct for a residential area, with more boutique shops and that sort of thing. And we've got to look for that sort of future.
Yeah, I think very good points made there, and hopefully some of those sorts of things come out. Certainly from this group that I was listening to, there was some conversation about how we make sure that people are using the full length of the high street, and whilst the vacancies could be largely in some parts or other, a lot of our independent businesses are towards the lower half of the high street, and there's actually, lots of businesses there that loads of us use all the time, but visitors to the area don't know they're there, which is a bit of a shame. And I know that that's something that cropped up over here. I think there is something that we could maybe outline a bit more. Maybe officers could explain a little bit more about some of the powers that we have been using around some of those older buildings, or just the buildings that are in poor shape up the high street, because a lot of the time, especially when they're rented, it's letting the tenant businesses down as well, and it is something that people do raise with us. It's, it's not the first time someone has raised with us the visual look of some of those buildings down the high street, and that some people also just seem to be content to have some of those buildings empty. They know when we've made contact with them, they've got very little interest in doing anything with them, which is a real shame. I will quickly bring in Councillor Clark, and then we'll just ask for some of the general feedback if people are happy to supply that, so that we've got a note. So, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just briefly, I mean, the gentleman over there was talking about accommodation within and around the high street. There are obviously at the moment some of the old buildings, I think Harris and Harris Solicitors and various others have been turned into accommodation, and there is planning permission in place for apartments above the NatWest Bank, but they've had their planning permission for about 18 months now, and there's been absolutely no movement, which hopefully might, from the drawings we saw, enhance what is basically a brick office block, concrete office block. And I think we do need not everything to be residential, but if you've got some more residential in and around the high street, that could bring the footfall, which could bring in the more localized independent shops.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So is there anyone from any of these group over here that wish to? Okay, Councillor Watson.
So we did get into quite a discussion on our little group over there. I think the most overwhelming thing we said was we need to be looking at opening up the high street. I have explained that is a KCC thing. But we need to open up that high street. When it first came up, it was probably a fantastic idea. Now it's done. It's killing off the high street. And until we start getting footfall through that high street, doesn't matter how much money or how much we push it, it is not going to work. I think a business forum that gets listened to. I heard that you'd had a business forum before, didn't get listened to. So perhaps we need to be having one where we have got a lot of to and fro between us. We're actually listening both ways. You come to the council and say what you think. The council comes back and talks to you. So I think that would be improved lines of communication. We need to be looking at events to celebrate Sittingbourne. We have got a lot of fantastic things out there. I said barrows, celebrate the heritage of Sittingbourne on their walls. But God forbid when they go, that heritage could be lost. We've already lost the historical research group. We need to be looking more at what we can do for them. What we need to do is promote the amazing heritage that is out there around Sittingbourne. We need to be looking at maps. We need to be looking at what we can do to make this a destination place. People look at Faversham and go, oh yes, we go down there for the history. We go down there for the They should be coming to Sittingbourne for the market and for the history. So we need to be looking at ways that we can do that. We also brought up the Avenue of Remembrance. Yep, that is the only one in the country, I believe, possibly the world. We need to be celebrating that a lot as well. Christmas lights, my goodness, we need to be doing something with those, because I think a number of us have probably got better lights in our cupboards indoors. So we need to be doing that as well. That needs to be a big event. That should be a fantastic event for Christmas, bringing people into this town. Because let's face it, Canterbury do it, Maidstone do it, Faversham do it, Sheerness does it, but we don't. So we need to be celebrating that a lot more. We did talk about parking charges, but I don't think we want to go down that very much. Was there anything I missed out? That was basically it was. We need to be encouraging more business into our high street, and what we can do, Teresa's going to come up with something now, what we can do to bring more life back into the high street. And I think opening it up would be the best thing.
Yep, Teresa, please go ahead.
Thank you. It was something that we did talk about, which was as part of the business forum to actually have a paid employee like Faversham have. that actually promotes the town, and perhaps they could pull the businesses together to literally knock on the doors. And if I wasn't already doing 40,000 other things, I kid you not, if I had any spare capacity, maybe between midnight and 4, I could squeeze something else in. But other than that, you probably need to buy me some extra Valium. But we need someone to be paid who would literally collect all the businesses together and make them care. As we've got our really good businesses here behind us, who are really important, there's a load of other businesses out there. And if it wasn't for the lovely Sarah Fish, who allows us to have just a few hours in her shop window, we wouldn't be in the town at all. Heritage would be completely dead in our town. And it's only thanks to her. Now, we did talk to her about coming here, and she sort of said, "Oh, I might be able to come." But if she'd have thought that she would have been listened to, maybe she would be here, or maybe she would go to a business forum. She used to belong to the forum, but it wasn't in the town anymore. It was moved out of town. It needs to be in the town. Our little heritage centre could be the place where that could happen. We only need 200,000 to buy the £275,000 5 Roman Square, which we have looked at. And if Swale Borough Council has any sway with, what's the company called? Southern Housing, to hold on to it for us while we're able to allocate funds, that would make a huge difference. And we could use it for all sorts of things.
I'm sure that Councillor Gibson heard your remarks there and will speak to Southern Housing just to put in a friendly word at the very least. And Councillor Watson and myself also meet with them regularly, so we will try our best on that front. I think let's not shy away from the parking issue. I don't know, did people hate my idea of there being these stop and shop bays? Is that a good idea? If there's appetite for that, I'd be open to a member making that as a proposal that we take a vote on to go to the relevant committee. Sorry, a minute. Right, okay. Councillor Gibson, are you happy?
Yeah, I'd like to propose that, yeah.
Yep, so Councillor Gibson proposed it seconded by Councillor Cheeseman. Okay, let's just get this over with now. So for the members here, all those in favour of exploring stop and shop bays in Sittingbourne Town Centre? Yep. Okay, excellent, thank you. Right, so that will go to the service committee. Hopefully they will find time to consider that ASAP. What else was it about parking? Let's just have some... That was it. Okay, right. Did someone here indicate? Yep.
Sorry, can I just say with the stop and shop, how long are they given for that? Is it the same? Sorry.
Yeah, so usually it's the same as what the on-street parking is. And if we need to change those, then again, I hate to be the person that always says there's an issue with this, but... On-street parking is Kent County Council, car parks is Swale Borough Council. It's one of these constant issues that we're always rubbing up against. And the issue we have if we push too much against on-street parking is KCC will see an opportunity to make money out of it and charge people to park on street, which we really don't want them to do.
Okay, so you can't change the time on the shop and stop.
Well, I mean, that could be something that we ask the committee to look at, but it's usually, when it's been rolled out, benchmarked against whatever the on-street parking is. I think in other places they do offer something, but then there's a nominal charge with that, and then you just start getting into different bands of charging again. So,
Do you know what it is in the high street?
The period...
Ones in the high street.
They're 20 minutes. Yeah.
That just is not enough time. By the time you've parked your car, you've got one shop. And then you've got to be back. So really, I'm thinking 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Unless you're a disabled blue badge holder,
Yeah.
and then you can park there all day.
You can.
Like the
guy
fella who
next to
works
you.
next door to me.
No, yeah, I know. And this is part of what we're trying to do, because it's about the capacity that we don't have on the high street because of the disabled parking bays being there, that it's an attempt to boost what, we don't have. But, there's nothing stopping that committee. We can't decide for the committee what it is, but this is a proposal that then they have to go out and consider. So I'm sure those of us that have been here hearing your views that are on those committees will we'll put that across. Any feedback from this group? Councillor Cheeseman?
Yeah, we had quite a few things. The look of the high street, sort of flowers, not dead flowers, because that's a real turn off for people when they come along. Maybe like a coffee culture, like having France, nice outside shops. Also, I was talking about the Heritage Hub, and two of us mentioned the cinema. That would make it beautiful, wouldn't it? Heritage Hub and all other things, a community hub and things. Oh, because that would be lovely. Oh. Payment activities, market stalls. It might be a good idea. Just had a thought about Facebook, not for the retailers, but for the people that what they want to see, why they would come into a high street. Ask the shoppers, because if we know what they want, we can actually work around that, couldn't we? That might be an idea. So perhaps something could go out, or the councillors could actually go on their Facebook pages and ask the people that actually shop in or don't shop in the town, what would they like to see that will make them come in and use the high street?
Okay, I can tell you the answer would be Primark. That's all everybody ever says.
Events and things like that, and also the signage outside the station, signage to sort of support independent shops, saying they're independent shops, that way sort of thing. And also the Kemsley Light Railway, they're actually wanting to do some repairs between September and December. And so, they do events there. So, need to sort of keep things going on there as well. So if money could, if any money could help them.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll just bring in the two people here indicated from your group, so I'll do that and then I'll bring you in.
Yeah, it was just a comment on the parking. So obviously I'm from the Yellow Stock, so people talk to me and they claim that in Faversham the parking isn't regulated so strictly or whatever, so you can get away with parking here, there and everywhere. It's like they can't ticket cars on a road with a broken double yellow line, this sort of thing, so it's just a comment I've heard in the pub, just saying they can park in Faversham freely but not Sittingbourne, and that's why maybe they don't come to Sittingbourne as easy. That's it.
Yeah, I think we've heard from Faversham colleagues in the past about some of the issues they've had with some of the parking around the town centre area, and ensuring that what should be enforced is enforced, and that it causes issues actually even for some of the businesses on the in the area with the deliveries that they try to take and all of that sort of stuff. It causes problems for them. And then bring you in.
Yeah, I'm going back a little bit to do with the signage as well from outside the station, but I also including something like involving the light railway, so there's more people actually know where it is. There is some, but also I was saying about the alleyways, improving the appearance of the alleyways, because they are linkages into other areas of interest and potential shopping areas. So they need work. Desperately need work. They're not safe either. People don't like going down.
Yeah. Okay, that's a very good point. Got plenty of those coming off the high street, which is to do with the town's heritage and sort of unique identity to that. So I'll bring you in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if these lovely people need 275,000 for the Heritage Centre, give them that. Feel free to stick a couple of signposts so we keep everybody happy. If you could point one to Blackbourne TV, one to Barrows, we're all happy. Oh, and Yellow Stocks, and we might as well do one for Tops Jewellers as well. He's been there a while. Everybody's happy.
All right, thank you very much. Were there any other comments that people just wanted to quickly make? Yeah.
I was just wondering if grants are offered Will this help bring people? Will they be interested? Also, maybe to think of what high street would we like to model. It's really important that Sittingbourne as a town, I've been in Sittingbourne 19 years, it's really changed. So we need to actually think of also what will grab the interest of the young people. What activities do we have? We don't have like an activity center. We don't have one shop, I don't know, like a ping pong table, different activities where young people can actually go in and have something nice. We need to have something that will attract people in. But importantly, let's ask ourselves, what high street do we want to model? What is working well? What don't we have? And then maybe we can put some interest. Music brings people everywhere. Music is great.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much for those comments. I think it is really important that we do have to give consideration, I think, to what younger people would use as well. And I think one of the busiest parts of the town centre now is the light, because of the cinema and the bowling. That's just an obvious point to be made, but a lot of the people that use those sorts of things go in and go out again, and it's how we make sure that footfall is going through. So what I think that then begs the question, doesn't it? What would keep them there a bit longer, or what's the barrier to them staying a bit longer or doing something else? I think that's so yes. I've got Councillor Clark, then Councillor Sarah Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, the signage, obviously, but where you come through from sort of like the Forum car park area, and also a bit further down where you come through from, down the side of what used to be the Halifax Building Society. I think that was planned to be a cross route anyway at one point, but those could be made to look a lot nicer. So it encourages people to think, what am I going into? Is it going to be as bad as this? Just, brick frontage or whatever. And what you brought up about the youth offering. I mean, I know it was, it's been empty for a long, long time. But what used to be New House Youth Club. You still got the building there with all the squash courts and whatever else used to be in that. I mean, I know it's probably beyond the scope of Swale Borough Council to bring that back into use, but could we not look at finding someone to take it on, put them in touch with whoever owns it?
New house, but obviously it was KCC facility, and I think someone has been sold. Yeah,
family homes.
So, okay,
family homes.
So it has been sold. So yeah, that is a shame. And again, it just goes to show these sorts of facilities being lost to the town. That was a significant sports and leisure facility for people at that end of town. Were there any other final comments? I think there's quite a lot that we have noted there, and I think, with the suggestion about a proper business engagement forum and working through some of those longer term things that people want to be done, I think we really do need to get on with that, because with local government reorganisation coming, there will be a new council. Swale Council will not exist. Kent County Council will not exist. There will be something that is smaller than Kent but bigger than Swale running our towns, and the sooner that we have plans ready to go that we then say to that authority, this is our idea for the area, the better. Otherwise they will fill that space, or the other areas that come in as part of that unitary will have those plans, and we will be bottom of the list whilst they get on with what they do. So I really do support us exploring that to get on with it. So I will take some final comments from Councillor Sarah Stephen, Councillor Tim Gibson, and then Councillor Worcester online, and that's it for this item. Okay, Councillor Sarah Stephen.
Fantastic idea about music. Music does draw people, all ages. Have an area that's dedicated so that local performers could just go up, use an area on a Saturday. Draw a few people in. Cafe culture, get a few more tables and chairs out by the restaurants and bars. It's just getting people to sit still and just join in. And music is a really, really good tool for that. And I was part of the original I was part of the whole project when the document was done back in 2022. And we did a lot of work going through, doing lots of walking around the high street and everything. And the ideas are still there. The lovely lady that put it together, unfortunately, isn't with us anymore. But it was a fantastic document. She put her heart and soul into that. We must use that. And I actually emphasise that we maybe as a council, we need to get that public again so that retailers can read it and have a little look at it. Because it's quite a few years ago, but it's all relevant today. Everything we came up with is relevant. We're all talking about now. Thank you.
No, I think that's very true. It is a really good vision for the area, and we just wish that we'd been able to deliver it all by now. Councillor Gibson, then Councillor Worcester.
Thank you. So you can take the lad out of Yorkshire, but you can't take the Yorkshire out of the lad. So talking about the music stuff, and I know we can't do it with this funding, but it would be great if we could have something like a bandstand. It is a big attraction. Even now, it would also encourage local groups as well that would be able to put on there and play. So, for instance, people like UK Paper Concert Band, etc. So it was just a play, and music is probably the most simple but effective way of getting people into the town. Thank you.
We also do have some really excellent recitals on a Saturday morning at St Michael's Church, and I think a lot of people don't even know about that. There is also so much happening in the town centre that people just don't know about, which we really do need to look at. Councillor Stephen, then I'll bring
sorry,
Dolly
I want to come back on that. I was actually born and bred in Crawley, which was a new town at the time. They had a bandstand. That square was pedestrianised from the word go. They had entertainment. The town was always busy. We also had a clock that people used to meet by. I know we've got the Bargeman. I think probably people use that now. But yes, I think a bandstand in Albany Park or somewhere would be amazing, but also just something in the town itself.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Councillor Worcester, who's been patiently waiting online. Councillor Worcester, I don't know if you know that you're muted. Okay, we'll skip that. Whatever it was, I'm sure Councillor Worcester can email me. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking part in that part of the meeting. It's really helpful to start this sort of conversation again. As Councillor Stephen said, a huge amount of work went into producing that SPD, and unfortunately it's become one of those documents that we've not been able to realise, and we need desperately to dust that off and see what we can do. Sorry, Councillor Worcester, we've moved on. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Worcester, we've moved on.
I'm not muted. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I think there's a bit of a delay between that and here. So it's really helpful to have that. We've got a note of everything that everybody suggested. We will then work through those with officers, and we will make sure that the actions that we need to take away from that will be worked through. There will be much more that we need to talk about as a community if we are to get the sort of town centre that we want and that people will want to use. It's not something that, everybody around this room knows, that you can't deliver something like that overnight. It's just not the case. The world has changed so much since 30 years ago, 25 years ago, even 20 years ago, when I could spend near enough all day in Sittingbourne High Street. We had 2 shopping centres to go around. There was plenty to do. People's shopping habits have changed massively, but we also have examples of where we can see that's not the trends that they have, and so there's lots of learning that we need to unpick from elsewhere, bearing in mind the issues and suggestions that people have raised this evening. So I really, really do appreciate people for taking the time to participate in that part of the meeting. We'll now be moving on to agenda item 6, which is public forum. This is an opportunity for anybody here who has a question that could be about a different topic than what we've just spoken about, or anything that they've wanted to follow up from a previous meeting. If there is anything that any member of the public would like to ask, here is your opportunity to raise that point. Nope, nobody online indicating either. Agenda item 7, which is the community governance review update. This is something that I spoke about briefly earlier. The community governance review, which was, aside from being another working group that I then had to attend the meetings for, it is a review that the council undertook to look at town and parish councils in the Borough of Swale. Obviously, we've got well over 30 in the Borough of Swale at the moment. Large parts of Sittingbourne and the surrounding area do not have any parished areas, and there was also halfway on the island which was unparished. So these were the areas that were largely under consideration as part of that consultation. There was a public consultation for the Sittingbourne area and some of the areas within it outside the town centre. Presumably people will have seen the proposals that went out. There will be a number of recommendations made to a meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee, which will look to set up several new parish councils in the area. But as I've already said, the consultation responses did not support the creation of a Sittingbourne Town Council, so there will not be a recommendation going forward for that. But there will be other areas of Sittingbourne having proposals come forward for a parish council or community council in their area. Does anyone have any questions on that agenda item? No, okay. Agenda item 8, which is the local government reorganisation update. Essentially, at the moment, we are waiting for the government to tell us what areas we will be joining as Swale or parts of Swale. There were several options on the table, ranging from one council for the entirety of Kent, right down to a 5 unitary model, which would see 5 unitary councils in Kent. A couple of those proposals splits Swale in several directions, and a couple of those proposals keeps Swale together. One of those puts us in a 3 unitary model with Dartford, Gravesham and Medway, and one puts us in a mid-Kent unitary option with Ashford and Folkestone Hythe. We are expecting to hear from the government in July at some point about which option they have chosen for us, and then the council will obviously commence its work working through all the different processes that it has to do to align ready for the eventual creation of those. If that goes ahead, there would be elections to that unitary council in 2027, with it going fully live in 2028. So we're just waiting to hear back from the government about what option they've selected for us, and that's expected to be in a few weeks' time, hopefully. Any questions on that? No, okay. So we now have agenda item 9, which is You Said We Did. There is a part of that is included in the agenda pack. I don't propose running through them all, but I would just highlight to people that following the meeting in February, there's some points there about the recycling rates that came out of that conversation and work that's been ongoing to increase those. There's some updates about bus services in Sittingbourne, the area of special control of advertisements, which I know that some people will have some real interest in, because that also lends itself to protecting conservation areas and the look and feel of areas such as Sittingbourne High Street, Milton High Street and so on. There's also an update about the Swale Community Lottery and the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan update, but I've got a little bit more to say about that one under agenda item 11. Is there any questions from any of those in agenda item 9? I know not everybody's got agenda packs, but any of those topics that I touched on, did anybody need any further information about that? Any contributions from members? Councillor Winklis?
Thank you. Yes. Basically, the screens that need to be commissioned, basically, give us a date for the July, August for the information.
What's that one referring to, sorry?
Oh, that's on the bus forum.
Oh, right,
On the
okay.
bus forum, we discussed it, and I meant the July, August was the date that they hope to get the.
That's for the live bus times.
The live bus time.
At the bus hub, yeah. This goes back to a few meetings ago where we were asking that we have live bus times at the bus hub. And yeah, I saw some of the electrical installs have happened at that site.
Doing that.
So those should be going in within a few months.
Very shortly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Winklis. Anything else from any members on those? You said we did. No. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 10, which is the Swale Bus Forum. There are some minutes from those for noting from the meeting that took place on the 21st of April. Our area representatives are Councillor Watson and Councillor Winklis. So we've just heard from Councillor Winklis an update about the live bus times being installed at the bus hub. Is there anything further to be? Yep, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. First things to say that the next bus forum is on 21st of July. If anyone has got anything they would like myself and Councillor Winklis to bring up, please let us know. Email us on the council email. We do now have the community, the Hopper bus at Faversham is now on the bus forum as well. So we're getting information from them. And we are thinking that perhaps we might need to get the railways. I know it says bus forum, but you know, it's all transport really. We might try and get them to come along and get involved with it as well, because we were told that they were going to be looking at coordinating the buses with the train. So it'd be interesting to find out what they're doing with there. They are going to be introducing dementia-friendly bus service, which I picked up on as I'm on Pathfinders, and I'm looking forward to getting an update on that. And we have got new bus shelters, etc., going on. As I said, if any of you got any concerns, anything you'd like us to bring up, please don't hesitate to get in contact with myself and Councillor Winklis.
Thank you very much, Councillor Watson. Councillor Winklis.
Just quickly come back on the bus shelter issue. I did actually ask to have new bus shelters put at various locations, and the reply we got back was there's only sufficient funding to basically repair the existing ones. So unfortunately, as we understand it, there won't be any actual new sites for bus shelters, which is rather a disappointment.
Yep, Councillor Sarah Stephen.
I think if the councillors could take the issue we've got now, there's going to be another GP surgery at the Memorial Hospital. Could we start to get it on the table that they'd have to think about having a bus route? Because Sheppey Hospital, Faversham Hospital have got a bus route. We've got a bus stop, but no buses for the Memorial Hospital. So I think if you could kindly take that to the group, it'd be really appreciated by a lot of residents, because there's going to be such little parking at the venue.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and something that we raised as well at the meeting with KCC, that myself, Councillor Worcester, Councillor Bonney and Councillor Palmer attended, because it's daft that there are several key areas. You know, there's also plenty of people, for example, in Kemsley, Milton, Sittingbourne, who are very limited to the supermarkets they can use if they have to go by bus, and are reliant on getting cabs just to get their shopping, their weekly shopping, which isn't great. Yes, Raquel.
Thank you, Chairman. Is it possible, please, Councillor Watson, for us to think about discounted bus fare for students, especially when they're in their uniform. As part of what I do in terms of my day job, there are some children who do have, who are neurodiverse and they have to get to school. Some of them are always losing either their money, their bus pass and things like that. Can we just look at things which, especially when they're in their uniform, so maybe like discounted bus fare or something? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Raquel. Yeah, I can take that to them. I think I know what the response will be, but we'll take it to them and see what they say, and then we can report back to the next residents forum. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. Okay, Jackie.
I'll be a bit long. I've had communication with both Stagecoach and Chalkwell. And over the Stagecoach's new timetable has drawn up some really ridiculous figures, and I pointed out to them one bus finished up leaving a time stop 15 minutes early. I reported this to Stagecoach. They then immediately looked at it, told the drivers, but they said there's seriously something wrong with the timetable. They're seriously looking. I've got somebody in Stagecoach who is actually looking at everything. They're tracking every single bus now, finding it was. Yeah, yesterday, there was a bus turned up at 9:30 at Sittingbourne. So it was 10 minutes early into Sittingbourne. Waited to 9:45. It then stopped at Ufton Lane. The next stop was Maidstone High Street, and it took 18 minutes to get from Sittingbourne to Maidstone High Street. It was at least 20 minutes early. And they found this. They've been tracking them. They've told the drivers, but they're still running. There's got to be a major change on the timetable.
Yeah. So Councillor Watson will note down about raising the timetable issues. And was there a second issue?
Yeah. I'll be sending on me. I'm seeing the second issue was Chalkwell buses. They had 3 buses break down at Kemsley yesterday. There was a 2.5 hour gap in services in the middle of the day. When the service is shocking. I have requested sent things to the MP, and I've asked him to see what is to have a meeting with him about it. He's quite happy, but it will depend on who the Secretary of State for Transport is going to be.
Yeah.
Now that we now know, if you've been reading them, there's at least 3 candidates going to stand for leadership. So there's going to be a vote. So we're not going to know who the new leader is until end of July, I think it is.
Right. Okay. I think you might have heard something I've not heard just yet.
No, it only came out last night. It's Andy Burnham, David Lammy, and there's another one. I can't think of the third one is. About our streeting. And they've all said, one said he's dropping out. I said, no, David Lammy's son, I'm standing, sort of thing. So we now know there's going to be a vote.
Okay.
So
okay, so that's noted down as well. And I think
I will keep I always keep doing it. And
I think the issue there you identified about that 2.5 hour gap in service is why we'd been calling for so long for there to be the live bus times at the bus hub, because there is zero communication with people when they are left waiting there. And we have seen it time and again where there are elderly people stood there for hours at a time waiting for the next bus because nobody communicates with them at all. So it's, at least hopefully with those live bus times people know whether to call it quits and get the train if that helps them to Kemsley, or just go somewhere else or get a cab.
So the train service is so bad anyhow, because there's only one train an hour.
No, well, obviously that will be changing soon.
December.
Yeah. Is there anything further? Anybody? No, is that it? That's all noted?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackie.
Keeping Tony informed.
Okay, I will take you, Councillor Worcester, so long as there's no longer the massive delay.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just apologise? I'm so sorry. Teams have been playing up all day. My frustration was with Teams. I've sent you an apology. I've sent Councillor Gibson an apology, and I will endeavour to be at the meeting in person in future, because I'm absolutely.
That's okay, no problem. Issues happen. So what was the point that you wanted to raise, Councillor Worcester? Was there one?
Just that Sittingbourne has a huge amount of issues with public transport. More than happy about working with the continued support of Councillor Watson and Councillor Winkless, because I think that joined up approach between very similar town centres is working, especially around the 106 conversation around the bus partnership. So really in favour of it, really enjoying working on it, and really enjoying working with my partners in Sittingbourne.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Were there any other points that anybody wanted the reps to raise at the next bus forum? No. Okay, agenda item 11, which is local issues to be raised. This is, do any members of the council have any local issues they'd like to raise on behalf of their local communities? I'll just quickly, I've got two things to raise. One is on behalf of Councillor Last and Councillor Pollard as Merston Ward councillors. That is that there is a consultation still live about the bus gate at Great Eastall, which obviously has been closed since 2019. Which means that Great Eastall has no bus service currently. KCC are willing to pilot a ANPR camera. Councillor Pollard has done a lot of work to make sure that that road is of adoptable standard so that that can happen, and the bus gate could then reopen. That consultation, I think, is live until early July, so you've got a week or so to well, just less than a week to respond to that. So that's the first bit. The other bit is a short update on the Elsey Whip, which is that following the finalisation of the Elsey Whip, which looks at walking, wheeling, cycling routes, Cycle Route 3 has been selected as the first key route to move forward from the Elsey Whip into detailed design. So that's the one that you can see up there, which is one of the connections through the town from east and west. The route has been scored against the KCC Active Travel Prioritisation Model, which identified it as a good candidate for early investment. The reasons for that is improvements to road safety, connections to green spaces. You can see there that it connects a number of schools on the south side of Sittingbourne. And there's obviously connection capacity there for people to get into and around the town centre, which is obviously helps people getting about for jobs, getting about for their various appointments, and so forth. The KCC Active Travel team and Swellborough Council are working with an organisation to undertake some engagement with councillors and local residents and schools. Initially, there'll be a number of walkthroughs along the route to understand what the opportunities are and what would make a difference there. And those walks will take place on the 13th and 14th of July. Both walks are about 2.5 kilometres each and will take 2 to 2.5 hours. And that will be followed by more broad engagement activities in September. So if people would like to participate in those, please do let your local council know if you'd like to join. And if you're a member and would like to join, please let Michelle Anderson know. Yes, okay. There are some copies of this available as well if people would like to take where you signed in on the way in. Okay, so that's my updates on those. Councillor Winkless.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I did have spoken to Kieran about this. Basically, the Milton High Street toilets were agreed by the Environment Commission to be closed, which we know they are closed now. This is right in the centre of the heritage here at Milton Regis. So where are we with the future of this building? And do we know who owns it so we can do something about this?
Okay, I'll bring in Kieran about who owns it, but also I can just say with my Vice Chair of Economy and Property hat on that there is a paper coming to that committee at the next committee meeting, which is next not next week, the week after, and that will be talking about that and the forum toilets, which have been closed as well as a couple of other sites. But yeah, Kieran.
Thank you.
Took the words out of my mouth, really, Chair. But we've been speaking to the building owner as well. I don't think I can say too much more than that, but there are kind of a set of legal arrangements in place that we need to look at.
Thank you, and obviously keep us informed. Thank you.
Councillor Watson didn't indicate. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a bit of promotion, really, for Albany Recreation Ground. I think it was about 3 weeks ago, Tim, we were for the Friends of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club in Kent have been raising money, and they've been installing benches all over the south of England, mental health awareness benches. We were lucky enough to get 2 in Swale, one in Faversham and one on Albany Park. It's a beautiful bench. It's modelled on the benches that are in the Royal Parks in London, and it is a lit bench. They've got a solar panel on the back of it with a battery pack to store it, so that in the dark hours it doesn't run out of juice and it's lit all night. And I'd urge people, if you are going through Albany Recreation Ground, as you come in from Remembrance Avenue end, if you carry on along the side of the cemetery, you'll see it on the left-hand side there. And it's a wonderful bench, and it's in a beautiful location. I think you'll agree, Tim. So yeah, if you are going through Albany Park, it's well worth a stop and a look.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Clark. Yeah, it is actually is really nice what they've installed, and obviously for a very good cause. I was really impressed with it when I walked by the other day. It does look really good. And on that theme, just to also say that the space has formally opened over at Milton Creek Country Park, which the Friends of the Country Park have been working really hard to get into usable state, and it's now usable, bookable. It's a fantastic resource, fantastic facility. So just a bit of a plug for that as well, because it is a really nice environment for holding workshops and events and things like that, and it will be used for education programs as well. So that's something just to put on the map for people as something that's now new and usable in the area, in something that really is a fantastic asset to the town. The country park really is brilliant. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to reflect on the full council meeting the other evening, and to make people aware that there was a motion that came forward to full council, and it was duly proposed by Councillor Paul Stephen here, and seconded by yourself, Chair. But disappointingly, we talked about funding and getting opportunities. We may well now miss out on the potential for funding opportunities. It wouldn't have cost the council a bean, nothing. But actually, it was about having it debated on the evening. But sadly, 2 of our colleagues decided they wanted it referring back to the committee, which now probably won't happen until October, by which time any opportunities for funding and things may well be lost, sadly. So I've got to say I was extremely disappointed at that, and I couldn't kind of let this pass without saying, because again, it's an important part of Milton. You know, we're talking about water quality, we're talking about the area around by the Raybell, we're talking about the creek, and it's something we need to get on top of yesterday, not today. And you know, Councillor Stephen spent an inordinate amount of time putting that motion together, going through, explaining in minutiae detail of exactly what we're trying to achieve. But sadly, as I say, 2 of our colleagues decided that it should go back to committee, and that's where we are, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Gibson. It was very disappointing that, you know, Councillor Stephen put that forward on behalf of the really hard-working volunteers at Raybell Charters who've done incredible things to really highlight a really important part of our town's heritage. And all they were seeking was this council's backing when they go out to get grant funding, because that is always looked upon favourably. And there is nothing in this council's policy or corporate plan that says that we have divergent aims and objectives. It is our aims and objectives sit fully where Raybell sit. And that was just seeking our support and calling on Southern Water to work with them constructively, which they have at some points, but we want them to work constructively with them to resolve the issues in that area. It is currently 20 times more polluted than you need for any form of inland creek ecosystem. So that's aside from it's 200 times more polluted than for recreation activities. We really wanted to work with them to get behind them on this issue, and it was a real shame that opportunity was lost at full council. It doesn't mean that the support from the councillors is in any way diminished, because I am very certain that there was an overwhelming majority of councillors in that chamber that night who wanted to support that motion, and were sadly, due to the actions of 2 councillors, unable to put their support behind that motion on that night, which is a real missed opportunity. Were there any other contributions? Councillor Paul Stephen, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, it was very upsetting. Yes, I did do a lot of work, but it was the Raybell Charters team that done virtually all the work. And I will say this will not stop them from attempting to get that creek back up into a condition where it is safe for everybody to use. It won't take any longer. It'll just be a case of we'll have to do it alone. But as the chairman said, and I felt the other night, that everybody was on my side in that respect, and it would have gone through, it would have been passed. But the Constitution allowed these two to actually not stop it, but just slow it down. I am really seething about it, but I will go back to the Raybell Charters and I will explain to them that they still have the backing of the majority of the councillors, and if we can do anything we can within our powers to help get it a speedier completion of the better quality of water, then we'll go with it. But thank you very much for letting me speak and the motion.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for bringing it forward. I think regardless of the vote, it was really valuable to have put the spotlight on the work that they're doing anyway, and would encourage anyone that wants to get involved with helping in any way they can to reach out to them, because they do so much excellent work down there, and they're a very welcoming group of people that would love to have the help of anyone that shares in the same interests that they have and the same appreciation for the creek and what it means to our town. Councillor Cheeseman, and then were there any other councillors wanting to raise anything? No. Okay, Councillor Cheeseman.
Thank you, Chair. It's really a call out to everybody. I myself witnessed it, a motorbike in Albany Road car park, Albany Road play area. It was going round the park, and it did stop and have a chat with some people. No licence plate, wearing a black balaclava so you couldn't see his face. I actually rang the police at the time, and I was talking to them on the phone as he was, but unfortunately he then left the park, so they didn't know where he'd gone. I have seen him since. I actually saw him today with half a balaclava, no top on, same motorbike going down past Morrison's. The police have said that if he must live somewhere, and he's not the only one. I think there's 2 or 3 others that go round with him sometimes. If anybody knows where he lives, or any neighbours, anything, they can just tell the police, and then they can go round and hopefully seize the bike and stop it, because it's going to cause an accident sooner or later. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Okay. That that is the end of agenda item 11. So the final thing is agenda item 12, confirmation of matters to be referred to service committee chairs for consideration. We had a proposal from Councillor Gibson, which was seconded by Councillor Cheeseman, about the stop and shop bays. That would go to the Environmental Services and Climate Change Committee. And it would also be helpful that a note is passed to the Chair of Economy and Property to make them aware, because it relates to the work that we want to keep doing around the town centres. Okay. That's it. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along this evening. It's been a very warm day, very warm week, and hopefully it's not been too bad in here. It's been far worse in the past, so it's been quite comfortable in here. So thank you very much for your attendance and everybody's contributions. I close the meeting at 9:05 p.m. Thank you.